So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Hobson, the Idaho State Museum Administrator. The Idaho State Museum is part of the Idaho State Historical Society, which includes the Idaho State Archives, the Old Idaho Penitentiary, and historic sites located throughout the state, and the Idaho State Historic Preservation Office. We offer dynamic and engaging programs that serve Idahoans across the state and have done so for the last 140 years and look forward to many more years to come. We hope you have taken some time tonight to explore our newest exhibition, Trailblazing Women of Idaho, which opened this past March. As part of our commemoration for 100 years of suffrage in 2020, but just came a little late because of a pandemic, we explore the stories of over 100 amazing Idaho women. Their unique stories continue to shape Idaho's history. Through a statewide advisory committee of women across all fields, we selected women who represent the fabric of Idaho. Tonight, we are taking a deeper dive into the story of several of these trailblazing women and their dedication and perseverance for the right to marry who they love. Like many states, Idaho began the 21st century with laws defining marriage as being one man and one woman. As individual states legalized same-sex marriage, couples traveled across the country to marry, but this created a constitutional dilemma. Could states refuse to recognize and issue these marriage licenses when heterosexual marriages did not face similar discrimination? On November 8th, 2013, 4 couples sued the state of Idaho over that very issue. Their lawsuit challenged Idaho's same-sex marriage bans under the Equal Protection and Due Process Clauses of the 14th Amendment. On October 7th, 2014, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Idaho's ban on same-sex marriage was unconstitutional. The U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged the Circuit Court's ruling, and on October 15th, 2014, Idahoans won the right to marriage equality. Tonight, we will hear from several of the revolutionaries whose voices sparked change. And moderating this panel tonight, we have Dr. Bob Reinhardt. He is an associate professor of history at Boise State University, where he works in the fields of U.S. history, public history, environmental history, the history of public health, and the history of the American West. His published work includes The End of a Global Pox, America and the Eradication of Smallpox in the Cold War Era, and Struggle on the North Santiam, Power and Community on the Margins of the American West. His current research project is the Atlas of Drowned Towns, a public history project that aims to recover and preserve the histories of communities displaced by the construction of big dams in the American West. Bob is also the director of Boise State's Working History Center, which advocates for and demonstrates the vitality and relevance of history. Prior to coming to Boise State, Bob was the executive director of the Willamette Heritage Center, a 5.5-acre historical site and museum in Salem, Oregon. Bob?
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Liz is too nice to say this, but as a professor, I have no problem reminding you all to please silence your cell phones before tonight's presentation. So if you could turn those off, that would be great for our panelists. It's a real honor to be here tonight, serving a very small role in moderating what promises to be a fascinating conversation about something that's not just interesting, but important, not just in Idaho's history, but the history of the country. And I think there are, when we're thinking about this history, there are 2 common perceptions about the history of this particular topic tonight and of LGBTQ rights more generally. One of those perspectives is, for the younger folks in the crowd, maybe it can seem like things have always been this way, that people have always been able to marry the person that they love, or at least that right was always inevitably going to happen. For others of us, I was actually about to say the olders of us in the crowd, it can seem that this was an unbelievably rapid and totally unexpected transformation. Of course, neither of those is quite right. The path to marriage equality was long and was never certain, and it took many acts of determination and courage and perseverance to trailblaze that path. And tonight we get to try to develop some understanding of that complex history. And as a historian, when you're trying to understand the past, you always want to get at the primary sources, the first-hand accounts of the past. And tonight we're lucky that we not only have eyewitnesses to the past. We have the people that made history here with us tonight. So I'm really pleased to do that. I'm going to do introductions to our panelists. I'm going to go in alphabetical order by first name. Amber Beierle is the Historic Sites Administrator for the Idaho State Historical Society. Amber was born and raised in rural Idaho, moving to Boise to attend Boise State University. I think I'm supposed to say go Broncos. I think I'm legally obligated as a professor to say that. Amber's favorite role, though, is that of mom to Malcolm and John. Deborah Ferguson, who's on the end there, is an accomplished Idaho civil rights attorney who has handled cases of national and statewide significance, such as a successful constitutional challenge to Idaho's same-sex marriage ban in Idaho and in the Ninth Circuit. She served in the U.S. Department of Justice for 20 years in the Civil Division at both the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago and in Boise. In 2012, after serving as the president of the Idaho State Bar, she left for private practice and established Ferguson Durham PLLC with her law partner, Craig Durham. Their firm specializes in civil rights and constitutional cases. Deborah and Craig Durham are currently handling an expedited case before the Idaho Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of a new law that greatly restricts the right of Idaho citizens to use the initiative or referendum to make or repeal a law. Rachel Beierle is a native Idaho farm kid, an Army combat veteran, and a mom of 2 amazing kids. Currently, Rachel is the home inspector and plans reviewer for Safe Built, and in her free time, she and her kids spend the weekends at the family cabin near Garden Valley playing on the river. Rachel loves playing the guitar, snowboarding, canoeing, kayaking, and soaking in everything beautiful that Idaho has to share. And Stevie Campbell is a 5th grade teacher at Marsing Elementary School in Marsing, Idaho. Stevie earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education from Northwest Nazarene University. Stevie and her husband, Zach, have 2 sons, Gunnar and Bowen, and enjoy hunting and camping in Idaho's backcountry. Could we give them a warm round of applause and welcome for being here tonight? Okay, we've got a great audience. We've got great questions already bubbling in their minds, but we also have some great questions we wanted to start with. And Deborah, I wanted to start with you, if we could tonight. Can you share a bit of background regarding Latta v. Otter and why you decided to bring it forward?
Well, the case actually began when I was asked by one of the plaintiffs, and that would be Andrea Altmeyer, to consider bringing it. And she really caught me off guard with the suggestion. And, she said, I just think this would be great. Don't you do all those federal cases? She knew I had recently left the U.S. Department of Justice, and I had practiced in the Civil Division. So, I was intrigued by the suggestion because it came, and what prompted her was the Supreme Court in the Windsor decision had just ruled that month, and that was the federal government was forced to recognize the couples that were married in states that did allow same-sex marriage. And so it really brought a lot of questions to the surface. And the summer of 2013, I spent a lot of time thinking, researching, and considering strategies, because there really was no path forward. I mean, some challenges were brought in state court, others in federal court, many different theories under the federal constitution, state constitutions, so it was all over the map. And I decided I really wanted to talk to some of the attorneys that had worked on the Windsor case in the Supreme Court to get my thoughts together. And I was able to arrange that through a conference that I attended, and it really got me thinking. And what also got me thinking was Idaho was really a dark horse. I mean, no one expected that it would be Idaho that would change the law of the Ninth Circuit. And that's because the Ninth Circuit is the federal court of appeals here for 9 states in the western United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. And it was the only state with the most draconian restrictions. It was embedded in the Idaho Constitution that a marriage shall only be between a man and a woman. So it was kind of the highest bar, the worst standard, and we're not on everybody's map. So that was part of doing that. And I ended up teaming up with Craig Durham, who we weren't practicing together at the time, but I asked him if he wanted to work on the case with me. And also the National Center for Lesbian Rights, the NCLR out of San Francisco, was great legal minds, and they were trying to assist attorneys around the country who were doing what I wanted to do. But I have to tell you, when I approached them about it, they were like, Idaho? I mean, just in a little disbelief. And they was like, what circuit are you in? I said, I'm in the Ninth Circuit. And they were like, whoa, the Ninth Circuit. So that, and it ended up being a marvelous partnership that Craig and I always were lead counsel, but they definitely had our backs with keeping a focus on the national picture and helping us learn from what was happening in real time.
I think a theme that's going to come up a lot tonight that we already hear in this first question is recognizing the enormity of the challenge and yet saying, yeah, sure, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Amber and Rachel, I wanted to ask the second question to you. How did you first find out about this case, and why did you want to get involved in it? Maybe we could start with Amber and then go to Rachel.
Well, I have to say, I just learned that it was Andrea that brought it to your attention. So I'm learning that this evening too. So, and I think that goes along with the trailblazing nature of it, the audacity of Andrea to come to Deborah and say, hey, you should do this, and really the way I recall it, and maybe Rachel will add to or correct me, we had a friend that was an attorney, and I think probably, through the attorney community, Deborah had been communicating, and she said, hey, they're doing this case. I think you guys should, come forward. And it was just sort of, again, that audacity of saying, hey, we hear you're doing this case. And I think we reached out, or somehow there was the reaching out back and forth. And this is a wonderful question that I have for Deborah too, about, I'm a state employee, so I was suing my boss's boss, and then Rachel, of course, being a veteran, I think that attached so many more complexities to the case of rights that she should have as a veteran, and then getting into another case that Deborah took on about a veteran. But I mean, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, we could be part of history. This is great. And then, we'll get into the terrifying stuff that came later, but I'm sure Rachel has some things to add.
Check. 1, 2. So personally, I remember walking into Deborah and Craig's office and sitting down. Amber had contacted me and said, hey, we're gonna go meet with these attorneys and see what happens. And once Deborah sort of presented that case to us, I was like, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Obviously, as we got more and more into it, I'm thinking to myself, this is gonna happen. There is no way this can't happen. Having Deborah and Craig on our team, there was no doubt about it. And with plaintiff support, we had, Tracy and Lori and Shireen, and we were just manifesting that power. There was no reason why it couldn't happen, and she literally had facts on her side. So I remember just stepping into it, going, "This is Idaho," as a farm kid, and conservative country, raised in conservative country. I just thought it was kind of not possible. Yeah. So that's how I started.
Well, this actually, now that I think about this next question, it can sound a little mean or not nice. Deborah, how did you choose the plaintiffs? Which is not to say, why in the world would you choose these two people?
You're not saying, what was I thinking?
That's valid. Valid.
More seriously, what was it that you saw? What were you looking for? What did you find?
Well, clearly Andrea and Sheila were in, since they approached me about the very idea of it. And I asked them to think long and hard about who they'd recommend, and I started interviewing people. And then I had people also that were referred to me. I interviewed from other sources. I had a very clear strategy in that I wanted four couples. I wanted two couples that had already married out of state and wanted their marriages recognized in the state of Idaho. And the reason I wanted two was, God forbid, if anything happened to one couple, or they left the state, dropped out, or weren't participating, then we would no longer have standing on that claim. So I wanted to make sure we had the redundancy of two couples similarly situated. Likewise, I wanted two couples who wanted the right to marry in the state. So that's what I had my eyes out for. There were some people I interviewed. I was also looking for a sense of stability and resilience in them. I was hoping, I needed people with grit that would be well, that could work well together as a team, and that I could depend on, who would, listen to our instructions about what we're doing, why we're doing it. And because I was watching the news, and there were some plaintiffs in other states that were a little out of control, and it was hard on the attorneys. So I have to say, I was complimented many times that I had the best plaintiffs in the country.
Yes.
So that was awesome. But there were people I interviewed who were just really afraid of it. They were afraid of the publicity. They were afraid for their safety, the safety of their children, their professional stature and careers, and they just couldn't risk it. So I think that they were very supportive of it, but they slept on it and couldn't go forward. It took much longer to select the right plaintiffs than I had anticipated. I wanted to get the case filed in early October. We didn't file until November, but I just felt like this is important. I need to really do this with great care. And I have been asked, so why no men? And that was also just a strategic decision. I was worried about having male clients sometimes in the climate of Idaho, and worried about their safety. And I thought I really wouldn't be able to sleep at night if they were in harm's way. And it just seemed like a higher risk to me. And I also thought, if I'm able to achieve this, it will be for every man as well. I mean, so they're not in any way disfavored by that. But that was, my thinking and behind that selection.
So, Rachel, did you know right away when you met with Deborah, like, yes, I'm absolutely going to go for this? Or she was talking about having to sleep on it for a little while.
So I did know right away.
Yeah.
I didn't, even though I had the thought in the back of my mind that we perhaps didn't have a shot in the dark. I'm going to go back to my Army veteran days. I spent 18 months in a war zone and in a humanitarian crisis. And you can ask Amber. I had trouble sleeping at night just because all I wanted to do in my life was help other people and change the world. And so I jumped onto this like no tomorrow and decided if anybody's going to change the world, it's going to be all of us. And I would be more than proud to be part of that team. So I didn't question that by any means.
What did you expect when you chose to participate, and did the experience meet up to those expectations?
I expected ups and downs, which we got quite often. I think Amber and Deborah and I, on the first day when it kicked off, just walking into the
Ada County.
Ada County, yeah, they're asking for a marriage license. It was Amber and I side by side, and I remember the gal at the front looked at us both and said no, and I remember Deborah standing about 4 feet behind us, and I looked at her, and she was like my rock. I knew from there that's what she needed to hear. That's all she wanted to hear to kick this off. And she was like my cozy, sleepy blankie, like my baby blankie. So it was, you kind of, as like going through life, you get a lot of accepting people, you get a lot of not accepting people, and right then, that very moment, I had them both. I had Deborah as my cozy blankie, and then I had the clerk that said, nope, I'm not handing you this application. And for some reason, that's when I knew, right at that second, I grew a little more strong. And I was like, let's do this.
And what the clerk actually said, if you recall, was, and we needed to go through this formality, and I had to have my clients, it's very painful, they felt humiliated by this, but ask for a license and be rejected because it was kind of a legal requirement. And the clerk looked, and she was like stunned that, that you had 2 female couples asking for a marriage license. And she shook her head and she went, contrary to code, contrary to code.
That's the most clerk thing to say.
That was like our mantra. And so that's what gave us our strength.
Yes, and I said, I think we should do T-shirts like that.
Oh,
Contrary
yes,
to code.
absolutely.
Right.
She was not expecting it by any means. I don't think she was their strongest clerk. But I think we caught them off guard. That was kind of the whole thing. But Deborah did let us know, like, here's where we're going. Here's what they're gonna do. Here's how this whole process is gonna work. So we knew we were getting set up for failure when we went in. It was just to start that process.
Amber, how about you? What did you expect going into it, and did the reality match those expectations?
I think that, like, I definitely was far more naive, and looking back with perspective, going in there and like Deborah alluded to, hearing contrary to code, it's absolutely hilarious now, but at the time, you're saying your love, your commitment is contrary to code. Okay. It's just, there was a moment of just like, this sucks, this hurts, and I think for as much as we were absolutely prepared, and I think that was the amazing part of what Deborah and Craig did, was each step along the way, there was a lot of like us standing in front of buildings and then going, what does that mean? Later, because we didn't know exactly what was the next step and what a rejection meant and what all these things meant. So there was this belief that I had that I'm glad I had it, just that I knew that for me, again, as I alluded to, suing my boss and having those conversations, because another thing Deborah said, okay, you can't tell anybody until like the day before. And so I am like going, oh man. I mean, I have an executive director who's wonderful and still our executive director, who kept saying no above the fold stories, and it's, we literally were in above the fold story the next day, and it was like a rare day off that my executive director took. And I finally, Deborah's like, okay, you can tell people it's coming out. And so I call and I said, so Jan, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm hiking Table Rock, Amber, what are you doing? And I said, so tomorrow you're gonna see a headline that I'm suing the state of Idaho. Honestly, the briefest of pauses, because Jan is a very intelligent woman, and then the next words out of her mouth were, whatever you need, we'll support you. And so I think, and and I did have the conversation with mom first. So between my mom going, oh, okay, you know, and I think that was the experience we got. People were surprised, people were shocked, but also like, well, if anybody can weather this, you can, and letting, so getting back to that kind of naive, like, hey, my track record speaks for itself. I'm a professional, I'm a good person, and I just really felt, and then meeting everybody else and seeing like, oh my gosh, they're moms. They've already got what we wanted and what we were trying to build towards, and I just went with that. So it was all heart, I think, at that point. And thank God that, you know, Deborah's brilliant to bring in the law to all that heart to it. So I think the reality that came from it, and I think we'll probably segue nicely to my sister, is just not going through it with that sort of naive stuff. And we didn't experience a lot of backlash, but, you know, there were times that my family did, and they sheltered me a lot from those things. But there was a reality there that I didn't anticipate. And I'm grateful to them in some ways for sheltering, and then just felt a lot of guilt because they had to go through some of the hardship of being in a conservative state while their crazy liberal aunt was in Boise suing the state of Idaho. So,
well, Stevie, let's talk about. I want to know more about your crazy sister, but that's a different conversation, I think. When was the first time you learned of the case? Was it the morning it was above the fold in the newspaper? And what was your reaction to it? What did you think initially?
Is this on?
Yes,
okay.
it is.
So Amber had first called my mom, and I'm going to say my mom immediately called me after she did. Well, she's calling her boss, right? Because that's what we do. Again, it was like, oh, okay, you know. We are a conservative family, and that has never been a question of supporting Amber. That's what you do. That's your family. And we knew how important it was to her. And sorry. I don't understand sometimes that we don't reach out and say we're all the same, you know. And there was no doubt in our minds when Amber called that, you know, we're going to be here for you. We support you 100%, whatever you need. And it was, you know, it was a shock at first because we were like, oh. And then we were like, but why shouldn't you have that?
Mm-hmm. So you've heard about it, and now you're anticipating some things to come. What were you anticipating, and what did you end up experiencing, you and your family?
You know, honestly, I thought no one's going to say anything. You know, we live in rural Idaho, you know. We don't talk about those things. And it was interesting that it was the good side of it was people came and would say, hey, I saw your sister in the paper, and my mom has a partner, and they've been together for 20 years, and they want to talk about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk about it, you know. And so that was the neat part that came out of it, that people felt comfortable to come to me and talk about, you know, their experiences. The negative parts were when Amber and Rachel would come out to events out into our rural part of the world. People would say things after they left. And my husband is the most conservative, grumpy guy you know, like absolutely. And what I loved was he would look at them and he would say, that's my sister-in-law that you're talking about. That's my sister. And that ended it. It takes a person that is, you know, your typical redneck, you know, backwoods guy saying, hey, I don't appreciate you doing that. she's my family.
Thank you. So,
Well, and I just want to bring up briefly, I don't know if you recall this, I think both you and Stacy, our oldest sister, sending their support via social media, and I know that there was backlash that came from that, actually you losing friends, basically saying, if you support your sister, I can't support you. And
at that point, I was actually shocked, because I was like, I don't understand why you would think that I would choose you over my family. So, at that point, it's easy to clean out your social media. And it was funny that my two boys, they, weren't very old, but I mean, Amber did say, may I sit down with your boys and talk to them about this? And I was like, oh, sure, And both of them were like, what? Why are we even talking? Why are we talking about this? Why can't you get married? That's weird. It was just a very generic conversation. Like, to them, they were like, can we go play video games? We love you, Amber, But I guess it was just, it would come in waves, and it would be a shock when someone would say something derogatory about Amber or Rachel, and I would be like, why? I guess that's the biggest question is, first of all, you're not involved in anybody else's marriage. Why do you have to be involved in theirs? And why is it not okay for them? And I guess we started asking people that. Why are you so against two people who love each other, who eventually had kids, or, the other plaintiffs who did have kids? Why is it okay for you to say that if something happens to one of them, that they don't deserve to have the children that they've raised? That they don't deserve to have a say in what happens to their partner? If somebody said that, to me about my husband, I think I would be devastated, I'm so sorry. It's just not right. And so, as hard as it was, there were so many good things that came out of it, so many good conversations with people that started to say, I didn't think about that, and you would say, what if it was your sister? What if it was your dad? And having those conversations, there was a lot of good that came out of it.
So Amber, knowing some of what Stevie was going through, how did that affect your actions and your decisions during the case?
I mean, number one, they sheltered me from a lot during that, because, I look back at some of the interviews, and we weren't lying when we were like, it's absolutely great, it's so positive, because we were in the Boise bubble. We were in, Rachel always tells the story, we were out in Chicago, and people literally coming up to us and just like, did I see you on the news? Did I? And it's like, yes, and it's just like, oh, that was wonderful. Those were the great, fuzzy, warm stories. And so I didn't hear everything. And when I would hear Stevie say things like, well, did you know so-and-so? I guess her mom and her partner are together. And honestly, it would just make me grin. Here's this accidental advocate who didn't sign up for any of this. And I think we all had family members that were same boat of just like, oh, okay. And so I think I struggled with it at times. And there's certainly, I would be dishonest if I didn't say at times it wasn't like, when does it end? When do we just get to love each other? When do we just get for this to be over? And it was hard to hear the struggles. And again, our sister out of state, being in the Bible Belt as this is going on as well, and just a swirl of emotions. And I think the thing that always grounded us, however, was just the legality of it. Again, I just always go back to Deborah's very meticulous nature and getting down to that. And that's always, I think, what would ground me. Is I'm one that definitely, the crybabies over here, we get caught up in our emotions, but we knew, sorry, sorry. It's, there was an actual legal argument that went with it. And, I don't know how deep you'll get into the questions with just being, the reality of being in the Ninth Circuit courtroom and, just hearing the case against us and just
Crystal balls.
There
There's sticks and wands.
There were crystal balls into the future. There was, how
And
many.
we weren't allowed to smile or show any emotion.
Oh, yes, all those things. But yes, just the arguments just were so bizarre. When they were putting the exhibit together, I said, I really hope you can get this photo, because they only allow a certain amount of journalists in the Ninth Circuit courtroom. And there's just this photo where the look on my face is like,
And the look on mine is like this.
But, where they're talking about, well, men will leave their families. And, to Deborah's point, I'm like, what? What men are you talking about? It was just this, grasping at straws. And you start to see, wow, there is a legal argument to be had here. And so, again, those were the victories. Those were the moments when, again, you're grounded in law. So.
I want to get to that in just a bit here, but I also wanted to ask Rachel about some of your experience. I was wondering if you could talk maybe about some of the positive things that happened, some of the negative things that happened during the case as it was ongoing.
Sure. So I remember waking up the morning that the Idaho statesman came out. I think it was, I went to the gas station and I walked in. I bought myself a sugar-free Red Bull and some gas, and right there on the newspaper stand, it's Amber and I, front page, this big. I remember people walking in and just staring, and that lasted for weeks. And like Amber had mentioned earlier, we would go out to dinner or just anywhere we would be. I'd have people, clients come in for work, and they'd be like, how do I know you? Even to this day, I still get people go, I know you from somewhere. I assure them they don't, but I remember most importantly and vividly, I received a call from my estranged father and my stepmother in Outer Banks, North Carolina. And I was walking out, I believe, to this parking lot right across the street. And, it's on CNN and NBC and all of these major nationwide and worldwide news outlets. And I picked up not knowing what I was going to hear. And I got, we're so proud of you. We're so proud of you. But we don't agree with it. And so it's kind of like that, kind of knocks you back down. We're proud of you for standing up for what you believe. We don't believe in it. That's kind of just an open and it doesn't mean anything to me. I remember I just said, well, I gotta go. I'll call you later. I'm super busy. Paparazzi.
I got to go talk to Anderson Cooper. I'll get right back to you. Sorry.
I remember going to our first Christmas party with my family as well, and my uncle in-law was there, and we were, at the buffet getting our food, and he looks at Amber, and she's right next to me, and he looks at her and he goes, how you work for the state? But I had an aunt that worked for the state as well, and he's like, you're gonna get her fired. And Amber's like, what? I work for the state too. And he's like, well, you're gonna get fired. And he knew at that time, we were trying to have a child, our first child, and he's like, and you can't bring a child into that. You can't bring a child into this gay marriage stuff. They can't have two moms. And I hadn't gone to a Christmas party since he's recently passed, so now I can go. But It was
Well,
all my
as,
family
as
did.
you recall, he was actually saying it to you, and I remember.
Oh, I just like to remember it like you're saying it to
No,
so.
but like just, I mean, I just remember like I had that moment of just sort of bravery, and I think that's why you think he was saying it at me, because he was saying, your aunt works for the state. What are you trying to do to her? And I said, I work for the state, as a matter of fact. And he didn't want to have a lot to do with talking to me. I think he wanted to, in most cases with family, like, I can get to this one. And her other uncle actually took her in the other room and said,
All the dinosaurs are dying.
Don't worry about it, honey. All the
And I can
dinosaurs
tell you,
are dying.
the aunt that he was talking about that worked for the state, she was my biggest supporter. Like my mom, before even my biological mom, she supported Amber and I and me solely to the bitter end. Like if she would have been there, she would have probably, gave him the bird and. But she had been sick at the time, so. He was that sole person in the family. My mom has 8 brothers and sisters. Every single one of them have been absolutely supportive. It was the one uncle that was married to the aunt. That was not my blood.
It goes to speak to how emboldened he was to do that, to sort of single us out in that way. And family is beautiful and loving and supportive, but it really was sort of like, ignore him, like, let's take you in the other room and embrace you, sort of thing. And that's Idaho right
This
there.
is the buffet table at a family Christmas dinner, so
And-
everybody could hear. He wasn't trying to hide it.
Right. And so I think that there is that just understanding that we know what state we're in. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. You get so many people, and I'm sure this is what my sister heard too, well, they don't like it. Why don't they just go to Oregon? Why don't they just go to New York? I'm not from New York. I'm not from Oregon. I learned how to swim in a canal, dang it. I'm from Idaho, like if I don't love it, I'm gonna change it. And I think just keep going back to, having a Deborah, having on Andrea, having these audacious women that just say, well, why can't we try this? Why can't we do this? And if they're going to take those opportunities and chances, why can't I? So.
Deborah, I wonder if you could maybe walk us through some of the case and some of the unexpected challenges that you had to face. How did the lawsuit and reactions to it evolve? And how did your own feelings about the situation evolve?
Well, there were many legal aspects about it that were unique to Idaho compared to the other challenges being brought around the country. One was, we're in federal court, and we were asked as to whether we would consent to Judge Candy Dale as the magistrate judge to preside over the case in a district court capacity and consent to her jurisdiction. And I said, absolutely. She's a wonderful judge. She's extremely well prepared and smart and competent. And I thought, that would be terrific. It was the only case in the country in which a federal magistrate judge served as a district court judge. And in our magistrate judges in Idaho, in the federal courts, there's a tremendous amount of respect for them. We have the smallest federal judiciary in the country. We only have 2 Article III judges that serve a lifetime tenure and another 2 magistrates. So if you're in a place like Chicago and there are like 25 magistrate judges, it might be different, but we already really put our magistrate judges on par. So that was something that was a bit different. It was also different in that the Attorney General's office was going to be defending the state. Many Attorney General's offices throughout the country totally stood and refused and said, I think it is unconstitutional, I'm not going to do it. Not so in Idaho. The Attorney General, defended it zealously, But in addition to that, Governor Otter at the time, I guess concerned that maybe that wouldn't be enough, hired his own team of lawyers to defend alongside them. So we were outnumbered about 3-1 in terms of being lawyered up in the sides. But the greatest challenge, if I could think back to one particular moment, it was, and there's nothing else that compares. So we had won in district court, and that was, a sense of enormous elation. We went on to the Ninth Circuit. We argued the case. I argued in San Francisco. We won before the Ninth Circuit. And the importance of that is for all of the states under the umbrella of the Ninth Circuit, California already had marriage equality, as did Washington and Oregon, but the other states did not. Nevada was in a state of flux with sort of a right of like domestic partnership, but Alaska had nothing, Montana had nothing, we had nothing, Arizona had nothing. And when we won in the Ninth Circuit, we didn't win just for Idaho, but we won for the Ninth Circuit. So it changed the lives of the 21 million people living in those other states, as well as our 2 million here. After that win, you wait till the Ninth Circuit issues a mandate, and the mandate makes the decision final. We got the mandate. I told all my plaintiffs, okay, it's real now. The decision's final. You're going to the courthouse in the morning. Like, let's figure out our game plan. So we decide how we're going to work that. And in the middle of the night, a little past midnight, the governor and the Attorney General's office filed an emergency motion with the U.S. Supreme Court for an emergency stay to stop the implementation of the law. And I had heard the motion was filed, but thought they're not going to do anything with this. We should be fine. We should be fine. So we got to the courthouse. It was very celebratory. Balloons, live music, cakes on tables spread out, flowers all over the place, hundreds of people there, and they were they asked the plaintiffs and I to come to the very front of the line to get the first licenses. And we were, it was a joyous, kind of surreal time. And I'm anxiously looking at my watch. It's 2 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's 8:58. And I see the clerk of the court walk out from behind his closed doors, and he looked at me, and his face was just, and I thought, Deborah, I have to speak with you. I have something for you. And I walked over, and he handed me this. And it was an order he had just received from the U.S. Supreme Court that imposed an immediate emergency stay on the law. And so he said, we have to shut it, we have to pull the plug, we're shutting down. And I said, okay. And, it was just a kind of a gut punch because, and I turned around to my people and said, okay, we run into a roadblock. It's not happening, not now, but it's not over, and we're in such a big crowd of people. I'm trying to huddle them in, and I said, I can't explain everything here. You can't hardly hear me. I remember telling them it'll be sweeter after difficulty, and follow me to the parking lot. Just follow me. Don't talk to reporters. Just follow me because, I didn't want to be stopped and try to explain something that I was reacting to in real time. There were a lot of reporters, and our picture in that huddle with some of my clients crying was above the fold on the New York Times the next morning. And it was, so we got back to the parking lot, and I said, okay, we're all going out for breakfast, you know, and we're going to talk about this. And then I'm going to work because the Supreme Court has ordered me to file a response within 24 hours. So, so I'm really, and the reason this copy that the clerk gave me is so wrinkled is I got into my car and I did this. And I just was like, okay, all right, I suppose I should keep it and read it again when I get back to the office. But that's the, and you know, the emergency stay was imposed. We filed within 24 hours. There was emergency briefing, and the stay then was lifted. And we did a complete do-over the next 7 days later, and had a new order that had already been Supreme Court proofed, and we were good to go.
Well, I have a few more questions that I'm looking forward to asking and hearing answers from, but we also have note cards out there, and I'd encourage you, if you have any questions for the audience, to write down your questions on the note card. We got pencils and note cards out there, so if you've got questions you want to ask them, please write those down. Got a few more questions here. Stevie, I wondered if I could turn to you again.
Sure.
We already talked about how you weren't obviously directly involved in the case, although surely you experienced ripple effects from your sister's involvement. And I wondered if you could talk about some of the ways that this affected you. You did that a little bit already, but I wonder if you had any more about that you wanted to share, or perhaps also who you looked to provide support. With whom did you connect to share your experiences as you were going through this?
You know, at first we were very, very private about it. You know, we would, you know, my mom and I especially would have endless conversations about what was going on. And I remember the day that you first went to the courthouse after, you know, and I remember my mom was telling me, oh, it's crazy down here. There's cake, there's balloons, you know, she's texting me.
I love that she led with cake.
She did, because cake is good. And I remember she's texting me, and then she texted me and said, it's not going to happen. And I was like, what's going on? You know, and I, you know, I remember her saying, I'm not exactly sure. I need to talk to Amber a little bit more. And I said, oh, okay. And, you know, honestly, part of what we talked about was a fear about how Amber and Rachel would be treated by people. We were even afraid of them going to the courthouse that day. Just knowing that some people have a full-on hatred of what was going on. So a lot of our conversations centered around their safety and knowing that they were out in the public and knowing that people knew their faces. They saw them everywhere. So our support system was mostly family. A few of my friends knew, just because, again, it was that fear factor of how people were going to react, and knowing that it was almost volatile, that people would just, that they think that they can just spew that hatred towards them. So we really would talk about it as a family, and, you know, we would have these conversations with Amber and Rachel, and of course they were like, oh no, we're fine. You know, we're good.
Boise bubble.
Right. But it really was a few family and friends, and like I said, it was as things came out, I realized that there was a whole group of people that really wanted to reach out, and so it became a bigger support system. You know, I know we live in rural Idaho, but there are a lot of families out there that are going through the same things that we were going through, and once that got out, it became a network of people that wanted to sit down and talk about it.
You became a safe space for some people. I actually, if you don't mind, Bob, I want to follow up because I've been immensely proud of Stevie as a teacher because you have actually had some students who have either come out or are transgender, and I'm going to do my proud sister thing. I think you should talk about that in Marcy, Idaho, and how you approach that when those kiddos, what it is for you.
Probably before this case, I would have not been able to reach some of those students that I have been able to now. But it's opened my eyes to what they're going through, even at a young age that, I'm in an elementary school, and it's made it easier for me to have those conversations with them and to say, I have a sister who is lesbian, and I'm like, it's okay. And I'm like, if you need someone to talk to me. And I feel like just even this case has opened up doors for kids to understand that it's not different. It's who they are. And if they need to have that safe space, I want to be that safe space for them.
Well, that's a beautiful segue into the next question, and it's for all of you, and it's about, at the time, what sort of broader effects, specifically in terms of human rights, if you'd like to go that way, or other ways if you might like, did you anticipate that this lawsuit might produce? What did you think was going to happen? And what sort of broader effects? So let's just go down the line. We'll start here with Amber.
Number one, why haven't we added the damn words yet? I definitely, go ahead, please. That I will say, having the momentum from the case and being 2021 and it not happening yet is dumbfounding. And with the state of where we are at now, it seems even more of a conundrum. That, and I would say just watching the ability of the transgender community to be a part of this discussion and the complexities that come with that. And I think, just piggybacking on what Stevie said, I had an employee that came to me shortly, and this was after the case, and who was transitioning, and just that safe space that being a part of the case provided, and just wanting to see that next level of the rights of our transgender brothers and sisters, and being a part of the discussion, part of recognition. So those are the two big ones for me that I'm disappointed that we're not farther along, and I would see those as being the next steps in the process.
Stevie, what about you? At the time, what did you anticipate this might have these big effects, or maybe reflect, as Amber did, on what you're seeing now, or where things might be going, where you hope things might be going?
I really think that this case pushed, especially Idaho, to think in broader terms. Things are changing, and we have to have those discussions. And I feel like even in our communities that we're seeing that people are talking about it more, and they may not be accepting, but I think that they're starting to hear. And I think that's what's important, is just getting that message out. And this case has allowed that to happen, that people are hearing and seeing these plaintiffs as people. They're not gay, they're not lesbian, that's a label, and they're starting to see them as people instead of as a plaintiff,
Rachel, how about you?
So I think in broader terms, I thought that when people would say, "Why do I know you?" I could tell them, and I've been extremely open, oh, it's because of this, because I don't know you. And I'm going to say 99% of them have been right. And then they'll ask me questions, and it's like this continuing thing. I could even say, Google the case. It's opened eyes. So they get to know me a little bit. They know who I am as a person. I'm not some weirdo, activist, like throwing stuff in people's faces. I'm just living my life. I have my 2 kids. I'm just a normal person. And I think that has helped ease people that wouldn't otherwise be eased into it. They have that saying where, well, everybody knows someone gay, and you're like, well, I don't. And they're like, well, that's because they don't want to tell you. So if you say you don't know anybody that's gay, it's because they don't feel comfortable telling you, because you do. So my hope is everybody knows somebody that's gay. My second hope is that these transgender rights, where people just not living to a standard or a title of any sexual concept, to just start being accepted. Like 0 titles. Let's just do it. Let people be people. And I don't think that's very far behind. So as an audience and people listening, I think that's kind of where we need to start, is maybe not call somebody a lesbian or a gay. Maybe just call them a human, and or a transgender. Just make it the norm. I think that's kind of where we can all start, right here, right now.
Deborah, how about you with this compound question? What did you anticipate happening, broader effects-wise, and where do you see things going in the future?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I've already said, Idaho was a hard row to hoe. Very fought zealously against changing the law and striking down that provision in the Idaho State Constitution. I certainly had my eye on the bigger national picture throughout, and what would happen then after the Ninth Circuit victory, and whether this would be the law of the land, and looking at what the Supreme Court would do next. There had been talk at the time that they might take the Latta case up. The Ninth Circuit might, or the Supreme Court might, from the Ninth Circuit. The case they ended up choosing was from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. After the Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee courts had struck down their marriage bans, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed them all and held that those bans were constitutional. So it was that case, Obergefell, that went to the Supreme Court, accepted on cert, and had the national landmark case. But it was, I think, when that decision came down, a sense of just a profound relief, and a sense of the journey of where we had started here in Idaho, and from the very beginning, and what those 18 months or more were like. So well worth all of the effort.
All right. Well, we have some audience questions here. Most media coverage talked about gay marriage rather than marriage equality. That affected public perception. Did it also affect the case? And then sort of a related question to this, or a second question, how did the Hawaii Supreme Court case, based in part on gender equality, affect the Idaho case? So, Deborah, I think there's components there for you to work with in terms of the language of gay marriage and marriage equality and the Hawaii case. And I want to get to that in just a second, but maybe I could ask Amber here, I'll just choose you. what about this, the choice of the language, gay marriage and marriage equality? How did that affect your experiences with it, if at all? And then we'll go to maybe Deborah to talk more about it.
Right. I mean, I would say, language is important just in the world that we live in. And when you, like, it was just like this, like, extra thing, gay marriage, it's like, no, it's a marriage that we want. We want this contractual thing that comes with certain rights and things like that. So for me personally, it was very important to make that delineation. This is about marriage equality, that, oh, yes, that's great. You've made domestic partnerships, and man, that's leaps and bounds in whatever state, but that's not, we all know it's different. We all know you're speaking in code. We all know that that is lesser than, and it was, it's no different than other legal means that have been used to suppress people over time. To say, well, what, you've got your own thing over here. Why can't you just be happy? I had at one point a coworker that said that, like, well, why can't you just be happy with, if you called it, if they just called it this, would you be happy with that? And the answer was no, because that's not a legally binding thing. And so just the nuance of language absolutely mattered, and to not separate gay marriage from it's just marriage.
Deborah, how about this question?
I would completely concur with that. I think it was very important for us that it was always framed as marriage equality, which is what we were seeking, and not a particular subset of a certain type of marriage. And that was definitely interwoven throughout the briefing on the case. Of what we were looking for. And Justice Kennedy, who wrote the Supreme Court decision, made a lot of that's it was an issue of equality in equal protection under the law of a fundamental right.
The related question or the additional question there was about the Hawaii Supreme Court case based in part on gender equality, how that, if at all, had an effect on the Idaho case, which I'll admit I'm ignorant about this. So.
No, and I think I might be too. Is that, you said Hawaii?
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, yes, Hawaii was one of the states in the Ninth Circuit that had marriage equality very early on. Yeah. And I think there was, to think back on that, my recollection is there was some backlash from that. And then other conservative state legislatures were saying, well, we can't let that happen here. So I think it was the pendulum swinging, really the other way from an early on effort.
Okay. This question is, you mentioned a strong conservative upbringing. Did this experience that Amber and Rachel had cause you to question other closely held views? And
that's you.
I'm going to go ahead and go with Stevie on this one. Maybe we'll start with you, Stevie. What do you?
I'm not going to say that I'm not a conservative person. I am, but it did make me question some of the things that we had been raised with, and it's not saying anything against the people that that we trusted and admired growing up, but I think that it was looking at it as a thing, being gay is a thing, and I think that this, for me especially, opened my eyes to it's not a thing. Amber is a person, who she is, doesn't change with her sexuality. It doesn't change what I think of her. And so it definitely got me to thinking about what was it they were saying. Were they teaching me hatred, or was I looking at it in the wrong way? Mm-hmm. And I still cling to my conservative side, but I definitely approach it with more questions. And I feel like it opened up a discussion with others as well. And I definitely think our society is going in a different direction these days. I think all of us are starting to say, you know, what is it what are we looking at? Are we looking at the person, or are we looking at what our ideals are? So I definitely think that my views changed. And it wasn't just this case. It was probably when Amber first came out to our family. That probably was a bigger shock, I'm not gonna lie. You know, and honestly, people said to me when Amber did come out to us, didn't you know? And I think that opened my eyes more than anything else, because I thought, no, what? I know I love her. So these have opened all these doors to questioning what is it that you're trying to, with religion or politics or anything, what is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to tear the person down, or are we trying to make things better? And I believe that this case is making things better. You know, it's making it better for everyone to have that family unit, and marriage is a big part of that, and everyone deserves that.
And then big shocker. So I'm a registered Democrat, Stevie's a registered Republican, and our mom is a registered independent. Bam, that's how our family works. Mom keeps the peace.
They always do, right? I think actually I'll direct this question to Rachel. In your experience, do you feel that this case and the increased awareness that it's had has had a positive effect on LGBTQ plus individuals or communities in rural Idaho? It's a yes/no question, so you can just say one word and then. In what ways? See the professor thing I did there?
So we're gonna go back to Stevie's story about, you know, she teaches in like the Marsing Homedale area, and she's had students come to her in confidence that they believe, you know, they may be gay, bi, transgender, whatever it is they are, and they look to her for guidance. They may not be able to talk to their parents right that second because of conservative Idaho. I know I wasn't able to talk to my parents, just as, you know, Amber may have felt afraid to talk to her parents. You know, that was the 90s. It's a little different these days. I feel like everybody my age I meet says, oh, I got a 13-year-old daughter that's just gay as hell. You know, and you're kind of like, you're gay at 13? That's awesome. Okay, well, cool. She's got this. But this is, the whole point of this is that, yes, it's making an impact on even rural communities, because if you have children reaching out to their teachers, maybe asking for guidance or just support or just to talk to someone in general, they're finding that comfort there, and I think that's extremely important.
Well, and I think, Rachel, you're in Canyon County now, and you're representing. I can't believe sometimes, because I'm like, I'm from Caldwell. I can't believe you have a pride flag out or an equality flag out at her house. And so Rachel's repping the 2C. So.
Oh, I get my groceries delivered, and all of them are gay. So I make friends all the time out there.
All right, I have a last question here, and I'm going to read it verbatim. It's for everybody. Do you all get invited to like a lot of weddings?
I wish.
Yeah, not so much.
Not one.
No.
Oh, come on.
Well,
The answer is yes, because
yeah.
Rachel and I were great dancers. And so, if for no other reason than the entertaining value of us dancing.
Right.
So,
well,
I don't know.
I'm going to move on from that one. No,
Before I get out and dance.
I look forward to it. Well, this has been wonderful, and I think we have a little bit more time for people to talk with the panelists, if you'll be so generous as to share your time after this. Could we give them a nice, warm round of applause? Thank you very much to the panelists. Thanks to the ISHS staff for putting together this wonderful evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you again. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.